Welcome back to I Don't Need an Acting Class with Milton Justice.
I've become aware recently, once again, of the dangerous vocabulary of acting. When I first met Max, teaching in Poland, came down to corner me afterwards to talk about acting. They mentioned a word that keeps coming up and came up again last week, and the word is authentic. It's as if somebody said, yes, one of the things that you want to be is authentic. And I was trying to figure out where that came from and what that could possibly mean in terms of acting. We have confused things and encouraged bad acting. We're suddenly believable as if that's enough. I would like to go back to a progression that I've mentioned many times, but it came from cobbling together lots of years of notes from Stella. And it had to do with choices. Not that we can do it, but we do know it to be true. We know you have to make talented choices, but you also know they have to be appropriate for the play that you're doing, which tells you right away how much you have to know about the play you're doing. It's like you really do have to know how to do script breakdown. You really have to know the difference. Tony has done a play both by Neil Simon and he's done a Steinbeck. You have to know the difference between doing Steinbeck and Neil Simon. So you have to know the world you're in, you have to know the play you're in. And so therefore your choices have to be talented choices, but they must be appropriate to the play that you're doing. The next step after that, which is another difficult step, is that as an actor, you have to know how much of yourself, of your connection, how much it takes in order for you to earn the choice. Stella called it paying a price. You have to pay a price for your choice. And so this is another thing. You really have to know that if you're doing Miracle Worker and you have a monologue as Anne Sullivan to Helen Keller's parents, where you are saying to them, in essence, leave me the fuck alone, you have to know how big it is to basically be taking somebody's child away from them and saying, I'm going to teach your child, you cannot. You just have to know how big that is. And I think in our need to be authentic, what we often do is we just say, well, as long as it sounds real, that's authentic, isn't it? That's believable, isn't it? But we do not take into consideration the price we have to pay in order for certain choices to exist. You have to understand, if you're playing Nora in A Doll's House, that for the first time in history, you are the first woman who ever walked out on her husband because she did not have a sense of self. You have to know that. You have to know how huge that is, or you can't play it. And because we have a tendency to make it about me and, yes, and everything is something and nothing means anything. So we lose the sense of how huge it is what we're talking about. And so therefore, first of all, we don't make choices that come up to the level of the play. When I've been asked before what I thought the difference between Strasberg and Stella was, without hesitation, I said, Strasberg always pulled the play down to me, the actor. It's as simple as that. It becomes about me. It becomes what I feel about Nora. Whereas Stella, start to say encouraged, and then I realized the word was demanded that we come up to the level of the play. And that's a huge difference. That is a huge difference. It tells me that I live down here, but the idea of human freedom is up here. And I have to move out of my pitsy caca piddly little life that worries about the subway and the rain and the mail and the fact that the New York Times wasn't delivered this morning. The pitsy caca bullshit of my life is something that I cannot even remotely get involved with when I'm doing a big play. And so, therefore, I have to move above my comfort zone. I have to expand myself as a human being in order to do these plays. I have to expand myself as a human being in order to achieve acting. Otherwise, I'm going to pull everything down to my pitsy cock on life. And it's not that interesting. In this progression, our talent is in our choices. The choices have to be appropriate to the play that we're doing. We have to know how big the choice is so that we know what it's going to take out of us in order to achieve that choice. And then, and this is the biggie, it has to be good theater. I've mentioned this numerous times because when I first started teaching, I was swimming through 2 years worth of notes. Stella at one point said, "Your choices have to be good theater." And I recall thinking to myself, good God, how the hell do you teach good theater? And here's what hit me. I cannot urge you enough to work on this stuff because we actually instinctively know what good theater is, but we are unaccustomed to making choices that are good theater. So much of acting just intimidates us. It's like we live in constant fear. We're afraid to make choices.
I actually have a question or maybe two about this because it's something I'm actually struggling with within a project right now. Because you talk about good theater, and right now it's something that happens often in both European theater and cinema where everything has to be like objective.
So, look, there is a reality. If you're doing Bertolt Brecht, you have to know that at the end of a Bertolt Brecht play, the audience storms the Bastille and demands a new form of government. That is his form. You do have to know the form that you're in as well. And this is the reason in television auditions and the reason casting directors give stupid notes, just go faster. And it's because actors have a tendency to think when they're doing an audition for NCIS that they're doing an audition for Chekhov. So you have to know the form that you're in. You are furthering the plot.
And I do tend to do that. But then you have this certain scene, for example, you have to play where you talk about making choices that are morally wrong, but you have to do them to survive, for example. For me, I would have the tendency to play the heaviness of that choice, the regret, the whatever it is regarding this choice that I know isn't the best, but I have to do it to survive.
Well, depending on the piece, sure.
But at the end of the day, another option could be is that I own it, I'm over it. It
It
doesn't
depends
matter.
on the piece. You can't make a decision without knowing what play you're in. The fact of the matter is, you have to know where the play is headed. It is not a mystery. You will know with this character it wins or loses at the end. From an audience point of view, did Nora win or did Nora lose? If I'm playing Nora, I know I have no choice. Winning or losing is not the issue. I have no choice. My choice is that I need to know who I am, and so therefore I must leave. Now, the audience is different. In a really good production, the audience will look at each other and say, I can't believe she left. And the wife says, well, of course she left. Or the wife says, I can't believe she left. And her husband says, well, of course she left. She had to find herself. That's the most important thing in life. And the wife says, no, it isn't. The most important thing in life is to be a wife and mother and to nurture children. So There is no answer when you're dealing with huge plays like A Doll's House. Nora might not even know if she's made the right decision. She just knows she has to do it. The important thing to understand is the complicated nature of being a human being. The great discovery of realism in the late 1800s is that there was no such thing as the right way and the wrong way. There was no such thing as good and evil. Realistic plays do not have a resolution. You'd never leave a realistic play thinking, oh, and that's how I should live life. It's a totally different thing. You have to know the form that you're in. You have to know if you're doing NCIS, it's about plot. You can't have moments as an actor.
Roxandra, were you talking about developing the sense of good theatre in our choices? Were you speaking about it as being people are afraid to make stylistic choices because then it seems like it's not, oh God, I don't want to use this word, authentic?
I have this thing, and maybe it's wrong. Like, my instinct is when I get a script or a play, it's kind of like playing the piano and getting like I try to play every note. And then, of course, that's completely wrong because some things are more important than others. And, you kind of find your way in what's important and what's important in the overall arc and storyline and, the big idea. But a lot of the times, what I've seen lately is that the choices, it doesn't really matter.
It always
And
does.
that's where I get lost with
No,
things.
no, 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 no. Here's the thing. Here is the thing. The choices matter in a very subtle way.
Okay.
In a very subtle way. There is a difference between moving the plot forward and moving the plot forward interestingly. That is the reason I used that absurd dialogue last week. The first time, what is it? I was walking down,
I was
walking
walking down the road in the early morning when I first saw her.
because it sounds like something that doesn't make any difference.
Mhm.
But the choices that you're making on something as unimportant as that is fantastic. I mean, I sent you all, I was just sitting and thinking, what kind of road was it? It's subtle because nobody does it. Everybody says the line is, I was walking down the road in the early morning when I first saw her. And they say it like it doesn't make any difference.
And just there was no sense of anything going on.
I'm telling you something. Your connection to it is massively important. You bring something to the table. And it's not just because Barbara Streisand had a great voice. When she was singing about Happy Days Are Here Again, it was a revelation. I know it's why Rachel got into NYU, because what we worked on was what was the song about. And that is your connection to what it's about. And it comes from a lot. There's something that makes it yours. You are an element in your work. It is not just about functioning and being accurate. Anybody can do that. What is important is that your relationship to the road, if we go back to this stupid dialogue that I brilliantly wrote, but your relationship to the road is you shopping. And so my first choice may be, it's almost like a painting, this road, and it goes through the trees. And it's just this delightful road. And then I think to myself, or it's a scary road. It's a really scary road. It's dark and it's almost like it's all shadows. Or it's a desert road. It's like a desert road. And I mean, it's just endless, endless. Now, what does that do? 50 people come in to audition for this weird play with one line of dialogue, and everybody comes in functionally because it doesn't matter. I was walking down the road in the early morning when I first saw her. And so I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I don't know. We're making decisions based on bullshit, as opposed to somebody who brings to the table just dry, hot desert road. And because I've made that particular choice, it was difficult. It was a hot day and it was awful. Now, when I was walking down the road in the early morning, and I riff on that. I mean, early morning, I was at early morning because I thought maybe it would be cooler, but it wasn't. It was hot. And I was walking down the road in the early morning when I first saw her. Well, that's going to be totally different than somebody who makes a choice that, oh my God, it was storybook. It was a storybook forest. And the sun was just coming up, and it was early morning, and I was walking down this road. Oh my God, I was walking down the road, and I saw her. These are all choices, and this is what it means to shop for choices. I personally would rip my eyes out and play Oedipus Rex rather than not make a choice. It's more fun. Look, when you consider all the things that we're going to do improvisationally, eventually you are going to be building the past of a character. You're going to look at something and say, this character talks about the past. I need to build the past. I need to do an improvisation. I need to do an etude where I'm building the past. Then I have a question. Well, what should I build from the past? And this is where you begin to think, I'm going to build an event from the past, appropriate to the play, making a really good choice, paying a price for the choice. But if I think in terms of building an event, then I won't make it boring. I won't make it functional. I won't make it accurate. I won't sit back and say, well, that's certainly from the past, but it's not much of an event, is it, dear? Okay, so that's really an important thing for us to keep in mind. I think the event is how we find what's good theater. You know, when you make a kick-ass choice, you really do. You make a choice and you say, oh, I love that. And most of the time we don't. We're so safe. You know, we are so safe.
Thank you for joining us. This is Jonathan Tommy, inviting you to visit our website, idon'tneedanactingclass.com. That's www.idon'tneedanactingclass.com.